the last of the leatherworking videos. Today I'm going to show you how to stain the leather and how to assemble the final piece. So let's get started. So for the dye, you basically make a highly concentrated coffee. In this case, it's about a quarter cup of coffee mixed with 2 cups of water. I drink a lot of coffee, so I tend to save the grounds in a jar in the fridge for uses like this. If you don't drink coffee, you can also do the same thing with instant coffee. Just boil it till it reduces down and gets to be a very, very dark, very strong coffee. The other thing I have going at the moment, which I thought I'd share, is actually how to make a natural hair gel. It's what I've been using to style my hair recently. And it's basically just 2 cups of water with a quarter cup of flax seeds in it. It works fairly well. And then you add your own essential oil to it to make it smell however you like. Or an essential oil that will do a specific thing for your hair. And then with this, you just let it, you get it up to a boil, and then you let it simmer for a while until it becomes the consistency of egg whites. So we'll just let these boil. And so for the staining part, you'll also need a cup to put the stain in, preferably one that's kind of heat resistant so that you don't have to let it cool in the pot. And you'll need something to apply the stain to the product with, and a rag to wipe it off with. For the assembly part, you'll need a hole punch, either this type or the type that you can use a mallet to hammer through. I'm using this just because of this table won't take any hammering on it. As well, the Vikings would have definitely used an awl to punch the holes. I'm just using this one for total modern convenience. And you'll need a piece of leather lace. If you want to do it that way, if you want to do it with a piece of waxed cotton or sinew or fake sinew, that's cool too. I just like the look of the leather lace. This one was actually cut from a piece of buckskin, so it's actually quite a lot stronger than the same size cowhide. So I like to punch the holes first. That way I can actually sort of disguise some of the hole with the stain and dry fit it before it all gets put together and finally. So I think what I'll start with is sort of a medium-sized hole so that there isn't too much bunched up on this 1/4 inch lace. So I think that's the second from the biggest on this. And in this case, I want to punch some holes to keep this all lined up nice and tidily as the first thing. So that way when I go to do the rest of it, it won't be as tricky. So now just making sure that hole is lined up, because there is a bit of an interesting flex going on in this piece. I'll punch the second one. Trying to get it more or less even, more or less symmetrical. So that is that. And then I kind of just want to eyeball where this piece has to go, and it's more or less centered. So I'll just put a bit of a mark there. This pen doesn't want to work, so it's acting as a stylus. Cool. So my next set of holes have to go either side of this mark by a little bit, so that I actually can get the lace into the sides of this when it's held open slightly, so there's not too much tension on it for the waster. And just making sure everything is still lined up properly. Punching the next hole. And they don't have to be quite perfect. It just has to be more or less, because it is going to be on the inside of this and on the back of the piece. So it's not crucial that it has to be lined up, but it should be as close as possible. I'm probably just going to attach this part with 2 strips, or 2 holes instead of, because it's not exactly the most high stress thing, so it doesn't really need to be as tightened up. Now to get the marks on this piece, I would just line everything up where it's inevitably going to end up. Just lining up that curve and everything. And then just using a pen, because it's on the back of things. In this case, it would help if my pen actually worked. So then I just line them up where they more or less have to go. Just getting it all in position. And then just marking through the hole roughly where it has to go. So just roughly where it goes, and then using the punch to punch the holes. And it's a lot easier in this one because I'm only going through 1 layer instead of having to go through 2. So now you can dry fit everything to make sure that it's all going to work properly. One thing I do find is that if you cut the ends of your laces on an angle, they tend to go through the holes a little easier. Just cutting them on an angle like that just allows them to slide in through the holes a little bit nicer. Or a little more nicely. Leaving just enough there that I can, on the back, that I can tie it in the end. So that way I don't run into too many unforeseen problems. And as well, it's a very good idea to test fit everything, because now is the time when you can make the changes, whereas it just is a little bit more of a hassle to change things after you've stained it, because then you have to go and stain it again to get rid of all of the just all of the little things that you've cut or all the little things that you've changed. You want to get it so it's all a uniform color, and that's a little more difficult when you've already stained parts of it and have to restain other parts. You might end up with a little bit of a blotchy color, which is something that you just don't want to have happen. And so I finally got the waster that this is actually going to be on. It was just finished the other day, and so I was able to just dampen this piece and form it around the waster that it's going to live on. Because it needs to be a fairly nice fit for that. And all I did was dampen it, and then because the waster is protected with oil and wax, I was able to dampen this leather piece and have it tied around with a piece of fabric, just a strip of fabric, and until it dried, which made it more or less stay in the desired shape, which is quite nice. And so that's the tied together piece. I'm not going to tie the back because it will hold fairly the way that we want it to, because the cordage doesn't want to slip through too easily, and it's a perfect fit. So not too tight, not too loose, and it stays in there when it's upside down. So it's a perfect fit. So now the next thing to do is to take it apart and then apply the stain. Okay, so you want to do this when your stain is a little bit warm. I find that it permeates the leather a little bit better than when it's cold. And basically, the process is very simple. Just get your brush really wet with it and just apply it onto the leather and just watch it absorb like it does water. It will lighten a little bit as it dries, because part of it is that it's wet. And of course you don't want to get it on any fabrics that you don't want to be stained, because it is coffee. It stains just like if you spill coffee and things. But the good thing is, because it is just coffee, it doesn't matter if you get it all over your hands or anything like that, because obviously you can drink it, so it's not horrible for your skin. It's not gonna absorb into your skin and kill you, like some other stains and dyes and things do. The cool thing that happens with the leather carving is that certain parts of leather there absorb more stain than others, because either the impressions are pushed in more, and the leather's more condensed, so it absorbs the liquid a little bit differently, and the cuts will actually hold on to things. So what you'll end up with is a darker line where there's a cut. So that you can make things look weathered and just very haggard by putting random slashes on them and things. Staining the inside of this, just because when the waster's not in it, you will be able to see inside. So it's kind of just a thing to make it more of a full thing. It's more of an all-encompassing look, so that it's all uniform. And because it's wet now, it's still very pliable. So any basic forming that you want to do, that's not wrapping it around the thing, the waster, because that will stain the waster obviously now. You can sort of just do some basic forming on it, and I just let those sit for a couple minutes just to sort of absorb a little bit more stuff, and sometimes I'll apply a second coat if I want to get it a little bit deeper or more even, or even sometimes just adding more texture to it, because you can obviously let the coffee pool in spots, which will create darker sections where it's actually absorbed more stain than in other sections. So that's sort of a way to sort of create texture and depth to it that you wouldn't normally have. So now I just let this sit to absorb the stain. And if you don't want the splotches all over it, you can actually just wipe it down with the rag and get rid of all of the grounds that are on it. And all those extra little spots that have. So there's a fairly uniform color. This one I am probably going to apply more just to the carving section as much as possible, and just let that sit until it dries. With the grains of coffee ground on it, to get little splotches and things, make it look a little more rustic and haggard looking. So now we wait for it to dry. So when your piece is dried, it's time to apply an oil to it to protect the leather and to protect the stain, so that if this ever gets wet, it doesn't just take the stain and the color right out of it. I actually like to use edible oils, partially because I think that they treat the leather a little bit more nicely than like a petroleum-based one or like a boiled linseed oil. Because now, instead of just straight up boiling it, they put chemicals in it as well, which I think it treats the leather nicer, and it's also better for you, because if you live in a city or around a big city or anything like that, you're absorbing so many different chemicals already, even from the soaps you use. So why treat something with a chemical or something that's more harmful when you don't really have to? Especially if it's something that's going to be next to your body all the time when you're sweating and things like that. So, and why would I want to waste money on rubber gloves that I'd have to wear to use a product when I have a product right in my kitchen that I can eat and not get sick, so you can get it right all over your hands and it's not a big problem. Same thing goes with the leather dyes. If you can make a leather dye from organic materials, why use something chemical based when you don't have to? So basically, I just dip my rag in the oil. This particular oil is canola. Olive oil works fairly well too. You can also use animal-based oils, but I find that those have more of a propensity to go rancid. Whereas the canola oil, I've never had go rancid. I had a container of this sitting in my shed for close to a year, and it didn't go bad. It was exposed to the oxygen and everything. No smell, no mold growing on it, no nothing. So I don't have a problem with it. Some people might. So basically, I just rub it in as liberally as possible, and that brings out that very beautiful red hue and some of the other different colors that the leather naturally has. Because all the coffee really did was darken the grain of the leather just a little bit. And because it's an edible oil product, you don't have to worry about it getting all in your hands and everything, and the warmth from your hands might actually help it absorb a little easier into the leather. And you can get the back as well. It's a good idea to get the back, and even right up inside here where I didn't get it with the stain because it didn't need to be, but this is a protectant to stop moisture from getting into the leather, so might as well cover everywhere you possibly can. And that's why it's a good idea to do this before you do the final assembly of it, so you can actually get right up inside. And once you've got everywhere that you need covered, as much as possible, you can do 2 coats of oil if you really think that it needs it. And just letting it absorb right in. Sometimes with certain pieces I've actually dunked it in the leather, or dunked the leather in the oil, but sometimes I find that means that the leather stays oily to the touch for quite a while, and in that case it was actually used fryer oil. So the leather piece that I had dunked in it, which, you know, it didn't really matter at the time because it was just a utility piece anyway, kind of came out smelling like French fries for quite a while. So you can kind of just rub it in a little more, and then you just let that sit until that fully absorbs and doesn't really feel oily to the touch anymore. But I find the oil really does help protect it and makes it a little more supple. Sort of helps prevent cracking a little bit as well. And then once that's totally dry, you apply a beeswax to it. Some people I know just use raw beeswax, rubbing it on and then using the warmth of their hands to get the beeswax to penetrate a little more. Some people use purposely designed penetrating beeswax. Usually it's a mix of linseed oil and beeswax, or you can make your own by heating beeswax or melting beeswax in a double boiler, and then adding a volume of oil to the point where it becomes a paste instead of a solid wax. But this I found at Shoppers Drug Mart. It's a wax for dreadlocks and other hair things. I was actually using it to style my mustache at the time. It was fairly cheap, but it actually works really, really well. And this actually has absorbed quite a lot of the oil already. So I figure I'm just going to apply this, and because it's a product that can go in your hair, it's alright to touch it. And that's another reason why more natural products are better. And this, you basically just apply it with a lot of, apply it very liberally, and just work it in. And then I usually let it sit for about 10 minutes or so before I wipe it off again. And it's good if you have some Q-tips or something, or a little bit of something to get in the holes to remove the excess. You can plug it with a toothpick or something as well. So now you just rub it in all over, so it acts as a barrier and stops even more moisture from getting inside, and it makes the leather slightly shiny, which is always nice. And the shinier you get it, the more the details that you've put into it will actually stand out, because the light will hit on the little facets that are formed a little bit better. You can even get the inside up here if you want. It's not quite as important to get up there as it is to get the face of it, and even just the back here. This section, because it's rubbing against a belt and everything all the time, it won't necessarily need it. I'm just going to do it a little bit for coverage. And because I have quite a lot of it on my hands. And I find that the wax just gives it a more finished look. So now I just let that sit, and then eventually then I just wipe it off when I think it's absorbed a little more. 10 minutes to half an hour should be sufficient for the wax to sort of absorb a little bit, and then you just wipe it off with a rag. So here's the finished product. basically I just stitched it around the way I did before, and then tied it off with a reef knot. And I generally leave the tails a little bit long, and in this case I can wrap them around here to secure them so they don't just flop everywhere. But I leave them long just in case it does for some reason come undone. They can just be retied again without having to really fiddle with getting them really nice and tight and everything with shorter tails. And then the final check on it, it fits nice and snugly on the sword that it's supposed to be on. It looks pretty good, and it's secure enough but also loose enough that you can still draw the sword without much force, but it's still, no, I guess it loosened up a little bit, but it's still tight enough that it's not going to easily slide out upside down, which, you know, shouldn't be a problem with this anyway. So that's that. I hope you enjoyed my my take on Viking leatherworking. I do need to practice it a little more and get a few more refined tools, you know, before I can really get a good idea of how feasible this style is. Other than that, that's it. If you have any suggestions for me, that would be greatly appreciated as well. Because I've only started doing this kind of leatherworking for probably 6 months now. So I'm by no means an expert on it. It was just something that I felt that I needed to share. If you have any questions, don't hesitate to ask me. Either contact me leave a comment here, contact me on here, or on Tumblr. And the link is in my About page here on YouTube. As well, if anybody's interested in the hair gel that I sort of mentioned earlier, I'll put a link in the description of the place where I found it, and it's a very nice recipe. And one of the good things about that is that it only costs about 14 cents per batch, and a batch lasts 2 weeks in the fridge. So that's pretty good, and it's totally customizable with scent and everything. So that's one part that I really like. So don't hesitate to like and subscribe, and thank you for watching.